Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. We like to really get into the weeds of this stuff. And for today's deep dive, we're tackling a book that really hits home for a lot of you guys out there, I think. It's called Overcoming Goliath, a red-pilled guide for men by Conrad Riker.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. It's pretty intense.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's also really eye-opening, and it's specifically targeted towards men who are going through, or who might be going through, the family court systems, divorce, custody battles, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, Riker doesn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
He dives right into the challenges that a lot of men face in those situations. Like right off the bat, he talks about how family court can feel like a battlefield.
A battlefield. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more with this battlefield analogy.
Well, he argues that it's a system that can often feel stacked against men. He throws out some pretty stark statistics, too, like the fact that mothers receive sole custody in something like 81% of cases.
81%. Wow. That's a huge disparity.
Yeah, it is. And Riker argues that this isn't just a coincidence. He sees it as evidence of a deeper problem, a bias in the system.
So is he saying that family court is inherently biased against men?
That's the argument he's making. He even uses this term man tax to describe the financial burdens men often face, like alimony and child support payments, which can be pretty substantial.
The man tax, huh? That's
That's
a
it.
pretty loaded term. What exactly does he mean by that?
He's basically saying that in addition to the emotional toll of divorce and custody battles, men are often hit hard financially too. He suggests that this financial burden, combined with societal expectations for men to be providers, can create a situation where men feel trapped, almost like they're being exploited.
Exploited. Okay, now I'm really curious. Tell me more about this exploitation idea.
He argues that men are often conditioned to be the providers and protectors, sacrificing their own needs for their families. But when the marriage ends, they can feel like they've been taken advantage of, especially when they're facing these huge financial obligations and limited access to their children.
So it's like they're giving, and then when the relationship falls apart, they're left with the short end of the stick.
That's the feeling a lot of men describe, according to Riker. And he connects this back to the idea that men are often pressured to suppress their emotions, which can actually work against them in family court.
No, interesting. How so?
Well, society tells men to be strong and not show vulnerability. But in a legal setting where expressing your feelings and concerns is crucial, this learned stoicism can backfire. It can make men appear cold, distant, or even uncaring, which obviously doesn't help their case.
This is like a double-edged sword. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't.
That's a good way to put it. And Riker stresses that this is where it becomes really important for men to learn to find a balance, to be both strong and emotionally expressive.
Okay, so how does a guy even begin to do that, especially in such a high-stakes situation?
Riker talks a lot about the importance of redefining strength, challenging those traditional masculine norms that tell men they can't show weakness.
So it's not about suppressing emotions entirely, but about finding healthy ways to express them.
Exactly. It's about understanding your emotions and being able to communicate them in a way that is both genuine and effective.
So it's about finding that balance between being assertive and being authentic. Makes sense. What else does Riker suggest?
Well, he also encourages men to find strength in their faith and personal beliefs, whatever those may be.
He's not necessarily talking about organized religion, right?
No, not necessarily. It's more about tapping into something larger than yourself, something that provides a sense of purpose and grounding, something that gives you strength when you feel like you have nothing left.
It's like finding that inner anchor, something to hold on to when everything else is in turmoil.
That's a great way to put it. And he also talks a lot about the importance of fatherhood, how it can be a source of strength and purpose, even in the midst of all this chaos.
He's really pushing back against the narrative that fathers are somehow less important than mothers, isn't he?
Absolutely. He believes that fatherhood is a fundamental aspect of a man's identity and that men have a right to be actively involved in their children's lives, no matter what.
And he sees this as a battle worth fighting, even when the system seems stacked against you.
He does. He believes that children need both a mother and a father in their lives, and he encourages men to fight for their right to be dads, regardless of what the courts or society might say.
It's like he's saying, don't give up. Don't let them define what it means to be a father.
Exactly. It's about stepping up, being present, and fighting for that bond with your children, even when it's hard, even when it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle.
And that's really what this book is all about, isn't it? Overcoming those obstacles, fighting for what you believe in, and becoming the best man and father you can be.
That's the core message for sure. And it's a powerful one, especially for men who might be feeling lost and alone in this whole family court system.
So we've got the battlefield analogy, the man tax, the importance of redefining strength, and the power of fatherhood. This is heavy stuff, but I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, yeah. We've only just begun to unpack all the wisdom and insights that Riker offers in this book.
Well, then let's keep digging. There's a lot more to explore here, and I know our listeners are eager to hear what else Riker has to say.
Let's do it. You know, before the break, we were talking about this whole idea of family court being like a battlefield. And I think one of the things Riker really emphasizes is the psychological aspect of it all.
Oh, yeah, he talks about that a lot.
Yeah,
Like, it's not just a legal battle, but also a psychological one.
exactly. He even uses the term psychological warfare, which might sound a bit extreme, but when you think about it, it kind of makes sense.
In what way?
Well, he argues that family court often becomes less about the facts of the case and more about a battle of narratives and perceptions. Like, who's the better parent? Who's the victim? Who's telling the truth?
That's like a game of manipulation almost.
That's what he's suggesting. He talks about how the opposing party might use all sorts of tactics to try to undermine you, to make you look bad in the eyes of the court.
Like what kind of tactics?
Oh, things like false accusations, character assassination, parental alienation, where one parent tries to turn the child against the other.
That's messed up.
It is. And Riker argues that men need to be prepared for this kind of stuff, that they can't just go in there naive and expecting a fair fight.
So what's the defense against that? How do you protect yourself from these psychological attacks?
Well, one of his biggest pieces of advice, and we touched on this earlier, is documentation.
Right, right. Keep records of everything.
Exactly. Text messages, emails, phone calls, even social media posts. He says you never know what might become relevant later on.
So it's like building a paper trail to protect yourself, just in case.
Exactly. Because if someone is trying to twist the truth or make false accusations against you, having that documentation can be crucial in disproving their claims.
Makes sense.
What else?
He also stresses the importance of emotional control. Oh yeah, that's huge.
Because even if you're feeling angry or frustrated, which is totally understandable given the situation, you can't let your emotions get the better of you.
Right, right, because it could be used against you.
Exactly. So he encourages men to find healthy ways to manage their stress and emotions, whether it's through exercise or meditation or therapy, whatever works for them.
It's about finding that balance between being assertive and standing up for yourself, but also not letting your emotions cloud your judgment.
Exactly. And he also talks about the importance of building a strong support system.
Oh, that's so important, having people you can lean on.
Friends, family members, therapists, support groups, people who can provide emotional support and help you stay grounded during this whole process.
Because let's face it, this stuff can be incredibly isolating.
It can. And Riker acknowledges that. He knows that men are often expected to deal with this stuff on their own, to just suck it up and be strong.
But he's saying it's okay to ask for help.
He is. And he emphasizes that having that support system can make all the difference in the world in terms of your mental and emotional well-being.
So it's not just about winning the legal battle, it's about taking care of yourself throughout the process.
Right. It's about coming out of this experience not just legally intact, but also emotionally and psychologically whole.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychological warfare aspect, the importance of documentation and emotional control, building the support system. What about the financial side of things? I know Riker talks a lot about the man tax and the financial burden men often face in divorce.
Oh, yeah. That's a big part of his book. And he offers some pretty specific strategies for protecting your financial interests.
Like red.
Well, first and foremost, he encourages men to be proactive from the very beginning.
Proactive in what way?
In terms of understanding their financial situation thoroughly.
Yeah.
Gathering all their financial records, tracking their expenses, maybe even consulting with a financial advisor.
So it's about being financially literate and prepared.
Exactly, because knowledge is power, especially when it comes to money. And he also has some specific advice on things like alimony and child support.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about that.
He encourages men to really understand the laws in their state regarding those issues and to negotiate a fair and equitable settlement.
So it's about knowing your rights and not being afraid to fight for what's fair.
Exactly. And he cautions against being overly generous or agreeing to terms that could put you in a difficult financial position down the road.
So it's about being smart and strategic, not letting your emotions get in the way of making sound financial decisions.
Right. He also stresses the importance of having a prenuptial agreement, especially in today's world where divorce rates are so high.
Interesting. So he's saying that men should be thinking about these things even before they get married.
He is. He sees it as a way to protect both partners and to ensure that in the event of a divorce, things are handled fairly and amicably.
So it's like a safeguard, a way to prevent things from getting messy and contentious down the road.
That's the idea. And it goes back to that theme of being proactive and informed.
Right. Taking control of your life and your future, not just letting things happen to you.
Exactly. And that includes understanding the legal and financial implications of marriage, as well as the emotional and psychological dynamics that can come into play.
Which brings us back to that whole idea of family court being a battle of narratives. I imagine that plays out in how fathers are portrayed too.
Oh, absolutely. Riker argues that there's often a societal bias that portrays fathers as less capable or less important than mothers when it comes to parenting.
Yeah, like the stereotype of the bumbling dad who can't even change a diaper.
Right, and he believes that this bias can seep into the courtroom, influencing judges and custody evaluators.
So it's like you're not just fighting against the other parent, but also against these ingrained stereotypes about fathers.
Exactly. And Riker says men need to be prepared to challenge those stereotypes head on.
How do you do that?
By demonstrating your commitment to your children, your ability to provide a loving and stable home environment, your willingness to be an active and involved parent.
So it's about proactively shaping the narrative, presenting yourself as a capable and loving father, rather than letting others define you.
That's a great way to put it. He wants men to take control of their own story, to present a compelling case for why they deserve to be an equal partner in their children's lives.
It's about showing up and proving yourself through your actions, not just your words.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of being consistent, reliable, and patient.
Because building a strong relationship with your children takes time and effort.
It does. And it's not about quick fixes or grand gestures. It's about being there, day in and day out, being present, being involved.
That's about the long game.
Exactly. And he also challenges men to be adaptable and willing to learn. He acknowledges that fatherhood can be challenging and that there's always room for improvement.
So it's about being humble, recognizing that you don't have all the answers, and being open to feedback.
He also talks about the importance of finding joy in fatherhood.
Because it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right. It's about remembering why you're fighting this battle in the first place. For your children, for your right to be a dad, and for the chance to create lasting, meaningful relationships with your kids. You know, we were talking before the break about how Riker sees family court as this battle of narratives, and I think that really comes into play when you look at his views on feminism.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the more controversial aspects of his book.
He's not afraid to ruffle some feathers, that's for sure.
He doesn't hold back, does he?
Right.
I mean, he's not saying that all feminism is bad or anything like that.
Right. He acknowledges that the movement has achieved some important things for women.
But he also argues that it's had some unintended consequences, especially for men.
He thinks there's been a kind of overcorrection in some areas where the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction.
Like he uses this term shadow feminism to describe what he sees as a kind of hidden agenda within the movement.
Yeah, one that seeks to elevate women's power at the expense of men.
It's a pretty strong claim.
It is, and he backs it up by pointing to things like the high rate of sole custody being awarded to mothers and the financial burdens placed on men through alimony and child support.
He seemed to be suggesting that, in some cases, the pursuit of equality has morphed into a pursuit of female superiority.
That's one way to interpret it.
Yeah.
He also talks about the issue of false accusations against men in family court.
That's a sensitive topic for sure.
It is, but he argues that it's something that needs to be addressed.
So is he saying that all accusations are false?
No, not at all. But he is raising concerns about a system that he believes can be easily manipulated.
Okay, I see.
He points to the fact that it's often very difficult for men to disprove these allegations, even when they're completely innocent. And he argues that this creates a kind of culture of fear for men, where they feel like they have to walk on eggshells to avoid being falsely accused.
It must be incredibly stressful.
It is, and he suggests that it can prevent men from being assertive in family court, from fighting for their rights as fathers, and from speaking out against injustices they might be experiencing.
So it's not just about the actual accusations themselves, but about the chilling effect they can have.
Exactly, and that's why he stresses the importance of documentation, of having evidence to back up your claims.
But it's like he's saying, protect yourself, be prepared.
That's a big part of his message. He wants men to be aware of the potential pitfalls, to understand the system, and to have a plan in place.
So it's not just about reacting to what's happening, but about being proactive and taking control.
Exactly. And that includes understanding your rights, knowing the law, and finding a good lawyer who will fight for you.
So it's about knowledge, preparation, and having a strong advocate in your corner.
Absolutely. And ultimately, he wants men to come out of these experiences not just legally intact, but also emotionally and psychologically whole.
It's about more than just winning in court. It's about preserving your dignity and your sense of self.
Exactly. And that's why he talks so much about redefining strength and finding your own internal source of power.
Whether it's through faith or fatherhood or simply a belief in yourself.
Right. It's about finding that inner strength that will carry you through the tough times.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've talked about the challenges men face in family court, the potential biases in the system, the psychological warfare that often takes place, the financial burdens men often bear, and the importance of redefining strength, embracing fatherhood, and taking a proactive approach.
It's a lot to take in for sure.
It is, but it's important stuff. And I think Riker's book, Overcoming Goliath, provides a valuable resource for men who are going through or who might be going through these kinds of challenges.
It's a roadmap, a toolkit, and a source of hope.
Exactly. And we highly recommend checking it out. You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks.
And remember, even though it might feel like you're facing an impossible battle, you're not alone. There are resources available, there are people who understand what you're going through, and there is hope for a brighter future.
That's a great message to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.